Hey, it's Mark Lettieri. I am in Hollywood, California with my good friends at Guitar Center, and today we're going to talk about 3 essential guitar tones that I think every guitar player should have in their toolkit. I am a songwriter, composer, studio musician, band member, producer, instructor. I play in bands like Snarky Puppy, the Fearless Flyers. I also do music under my own name and tour that music as the Mark Lettieri Group. And I got some of my favorite pedals here, and we're going to talk about how to get 3 essential tones out of them. Oftentimes when I'm in a clinic or giving a master class, the audience or students will ask me how to get these tones. And these 3 tones, pretty simple stuff. You can get them with not a lot of gear. An edge of breakup overdrive tone, a more higher gain fat lead sound with maybe some delay, and lastly, just a big ambient reverb sound that you might use for padding parts or textural parts. And we're going to talk about kind of how to EQ stuff. I'm going to be stacking some pedals, which takes a little bit of practice to figure out how different things work together. So we'll dig into all that. I'll play a little bit of my clean sound with the Fiore going into the PRS amp. The amp's set pretty neutral. So if you have a master volume amp, I'm just basically setting it to be clean. If you have an amp without a master volume, just set it clean. So basically this. So nice, big, fat, clean tone. There you have it. And then we're gonna start throwing pedals in front of it. So the first sound we got going on is Edge of Breakup, which sounds like a romance novel or potentially a Hallmark movie or something. The Edge of Breakup. I should write the soundtrack to that. Good or bad, I don't know. So what we've got going on, I have a little bit of reverb just because I like that sound. It's set to a spring verb. Dial it back just a little bit. Here you can hear the amp without it. Nice and dry, but we'll leave it on for good measure. And then over here, I've got the J.Rockett Melody Overdrive, which looks a little advanced. It's got a 6-band EQ. You don't need an overdrive with a 6-band EQ. I just personally like having that extra tone sculpting capability, but a drive with a simple set of tone knobs, or even just one tone knob, will do the trick. As you can see, the EQ's set fairly flat anyway. This amp is a little dark, so I have a little bit of the treble boosted, which you can, of course, you can achieve with just a regular drive with a single tone knob. I think the main thing to consider, hear how the amp sounds first before you start throwing pedals in front of it, and learn how to kind of compensate for different things. If it's a dark amp, maybe you need to brighten it up a little bit. If it's a bright amp, maybe you need to darken it up with the drive. So I like the darkness of the amp, so I will just brighten it up with a little bit of treble. But here we have it. The volume is fairly high, not super high, and then the gain is just kind of low. And really, you want to get a sound that will respond to your picking dynamics. So for example, if I'm just going to play a big old D chord, and not change the gain knobs at all and just play lighter, it'll clean up. Now also, you can use your volume knob, of course, right? So don't forget to use the controls on the guitar. You don't have to just do everything wide open on 10 all the time. You get a lot of dynamics by using your volume, by using your tone knob. You know, sometimes you want to play with a pick, sometimes you want to play with the fingers. That's all going to affect how much gain you're going to get, how much breakup you're going to get in the tone. So what I might do also is just sort of see how different pickups respond with this gain setting. So right now I'm on the neck pickup. Nice big fat neck tone. Let's go to the humbucker. I'll split this in a second so you can see how it works. So again, you want to keep that drive for the sort of edge of breakup sound. You want it hairy, but you want it to get a little hairier if you play a little harder, but you want it to be a little less hairy if you play a little lighter. So I'll go ahead and run this in parallel now. So it's going to kind of brighten up, thin out the sound a little bit for those of you who might just have like a standard single coil in your guitar there. You hear a little bit more of the string attack, right? So we don't have too much gain. If there was more gain, you wouldn't hear a lot of that string noise, but So for you Les Paul players, you know, keep it on the humbucker and maybe just roll your volume down. And that's how I get my Edge Breakup sound. I actually might even turn the volume down a little bit and put a little bit more gain in there. We'll see how that does it. It's still pretty responsive. So yeah, maybe be a little bit more generous with your gain, but I think the main thing with Edge or Breakup tones is that you want to get a gain sound that's going to react the most to your picking and hand dynamics. I think that's really kind of how we're controlling a lot of that gain. The Edge of Breakup sound is great. Depending on what kind of music you play, you could just leave that sound on for the whole gig and just control the volume and the gain with your guitar's volume knob. I'll use this for playing melodies in my own music or Snarky Puppy music, which is kind of a mix of like jazz, rock, world music kind of stuff. But maybe you want to use it for blues, maybe you want to use it for country. Really, pretty much any kind of music where you might not be throwing up the devil horns like right away. But I generally would play something bluesy with it or something maybe rootsy or just some straight up good old rock and roll or something like that. So you know the sounds, you've heard them on records. So just dial it into taste and you'll get there. This would be how I would get kind of like my general, I use the word high gain, but gained up kind of fat solo lead tone for a big moment on stage or something like that. I'll turn all these off and then turn them on one by one so you can kind of hear how I'm doing all this. So please excuse the pops. We are in true bypass land, I believe. That wasn't so bad. Nice. I started with the reverb. I have this set to a hall reverb, okay? So it's a little bit wider than maybe your spring reverb is. Maybe give myself a little bit more. Cool. Then I'm going to add the halo delay, and what this is set for is a quarter note and a dotted eighth. I'm a big fan of delays that give you a lot of features as far as subdivisions, which I really enjoy this pedal very much. And you can run it in stereo too, but for today we're running it in mono because, well, not everybody has 2 amps. Sometimes I don't have 2 amps, sometimes I just have 1. So I like having that double delay. Here you go. Pretty cool, right? Nice and ambient, but not too crazy. Here it is without the reverb. They're kind of cascading into each other a little bit for that nice effect. So this could work for a nice clean, you know, clean ambient tone too, but we're gonna gain it up now. We've got the HRM J.Rockett Audio Designs, HRM, which stands for Hot Rubber Monkey, which is a very strange name for a very cool pedal. And I've got the level, not too hot, the gain's about 2 o'clock there. And the EQ's essentially at noon. We have a top end knob and a mid-range knob. So all three, I'm using my humbucker here. Now, I'll hit the front end of the HRM with the melody, give it a nice gain boost. You can really hear all the note separation, but you just get a little bit of extra gain. That's how I'll get my high gain lead tone. A little bit of overdrive stacking for you. let's talk about getting an ambient reverb sound. It's pretty simple. Thankfully, there are loads of simple reverb pedals out there. Simple meaning they're very easy to dial in a ton of different sounds. Reverb pedals today, a lot of them have a lot of features. This particular one has a couple that you can use to get that ambient sound. I have it on set on Hall right now, which is pretty wide, but if you want to go wider, there's one called Church. A lot of pedals actually, I think, have this kind of setting. It's supposed to sound like a big cathedral or something, but that ambience is going to come primarily from the decay. You want it to be kind of long. Maybe you can brighten the tone up a little bit, and then, of course, effects level, you could make it all the way wet, and it just gets incredibly washy, right? We'll just set it at noon. A verb pedal with a church function is cool. A lot of them do these modulated reverbs, which I like to use. That's really cool. I like that. It's got a little kind of a chorus thing happening with this sort of like upper shimmer thing going on. This is a funky sound. This is actually a tone print that I made based off of the modulated reverb. I think I have it loaded. That's long. So that you can definitely let's go to like this church setting, high decay, and I'm gonna throw some delay on. So this is still my quarter note and dotted eighth delay, and it's gonna sound like this. I don't have a volume pedal here today, but if I did, it'd be nice to do those nice big swells. Of course, you can do it with your volume knob too, but sometimes the volume pedal might be a little bit easier to finagle. All right, that's how I'm getting my ambient reverb sounds. You can use these kind of in lots of different kinds of situations. It's maybe would be popular in like praise and worship music, but also if you're doing solo guitar of all types. Maybe you just like making soundscapes. Maybe you are recording and you want to have a bed of sound underneath maybe what a keyboard would normally do, right? Maybe you could even like play a keyboard part, like play the exact notes of the keyboard, but with that sound to kind of give it that guitar dimension. The possibilities are kind of endless, really. It's one of those open canvas type of sounds, I think. So these are three tones that I think are important for modern day guitar players. But of course, don't limit yourself to three tones. You might hate all of these. That's totally fine. That's the beauty of music, and the beauty of using the gear to make the music is that you can find your own three essential tones that work best for your music. This is what works for me. I've got my mid-gain sound, I've got my high-gain lead tone, and I've got my ambient reverb stuff, and I use those a lot in just about every band I play in. So come see me on a gig and you can hear these sounds. So if you're interested in any of the gear I was using today, you can go over to guitarcenter.com, or you could contact one of their expert gear advisors, or go down to your local GC store, pick one of these things off the shelf and give it a spin.